Not sure what's happening. It's saying this content is being sent to custom live streaming service, but it's not. We're not showing it. Well, we'll assume it's here. The streaming service, that is. And so welcome. This is our class number 7 for the Life Purpose course. And today we're going to be talking about the polarities, which I think both of you are familiar with that. Others possibly who would be watching this video may not be. So I think we teach it twice in the program altogether, partly because it's so important. We want to remind people, and then it also is good a lot of times to see things twice. So that's why we have it here and there and everywhere. So before I start, any questions or thoughts about polarities you want to mention?
Will you have some information on the screen, Jane?
No.
I have to find it.
We have on your resource page, you have a checklist for the polarities, and you have an illustration, and also instructions for doing the integration meeting. I think they're all there. I actually tried to go there to verify it earlier, and I couldn't get on. It wouldn't accept my password. So it's one of those days, I guess. Anyhow, go ahead.
Too. It's back on 202.
Okay, I'll get that then. I look for that.
Oh, okay. Good. In the meantime, I was thinking also this might be a really good time just to talk a little bit about how to work with clients, because when you're working with polarities, it's one of those things. It's a little different than doing a guided visualization, going to a mountaintop or something that's pretty straightforward when you're interacting with the different parts of the self in a way like that. And I came across these notes, which is, I don't know when I wrote them or what they are, but I think that it's also interesting and really important to recognize that when we're talking about different parts of the self, most often they're parts that are disconnected from our wholeness.
The book.
And this is as true with the polarities like the masculine and feminine and spiritual earthly, the kind that we're going to be talking about today. Interestingly, with the spiritual earthly polarity, and I'll be actually listing all of these in a little bit here, the spiritual part of that polarity may not actually be a part that is connected to our wholeness. It can be, I guess you could say, a fake. And it's just like anything. If we're not in balance with that, and if we haven't integrated some truth within ourselves, within our hearts, what we understand spiritually may be more what we've heard from other people or what we've been told or learned earlier in our lives, and may not actually be true for us spiritually at all. So that's a really great example of how that is true, that we have to watch with each of the parts of ourselves and realize that their main challenge is that they're wanting to come into balance and wanting to become part of our homes. So when we're talking also about one of the main polarities that people talk about on this scale is the masculine and feminine. And it is one that is so out of balance in our society now. It's very important. And those parts of the self may be disconnected from our wholeness. So the feminine aspect of the self may be actually a part of the self that is not what we would call the divine feminine. And the purpose of actually doing a process like this is helping the client and ourselves when we do them with ourselves, helping us to bring ourselves to that place of connectedness, and also with polarities, bringing them together so that they're interacting and connecting with each other, rather than a lot of times not acknowledging each other, or not understanding each other, or disagreeing with each other. So it's a really important thing. And the process that we're going to do, also the integration meeting that we're going to be doing, and we've done before, it's the one with the chairs. You can do that with any two parts, which is interesting too. So in addition to using this process with these polarities, you could pick any issue and have the part that has the issues start to talk, and then acknowledge that there's probably another part that has something to say, and go to that part, and you'll get what is, you get what's conscious, and then you get what's unconscious. So in an obvious example, a person who maybe wants to lose weight and keeps running into problems. Well, it's not the whole of the person that wants to lose weight, right? Or it would just go smoothly. And of course, I mean, there can be a lot of things that are going on too with hormones, etc. But just generally, there is something within the self that's blocking it. So if you talk first to the part that wants to lose weight, and then say, well, maybe another part of you has something to say about this, you'll likely find out why it is that it's being blocked. And an example from myself, when I was younger, I did a lot of dieting and stopping, and dieting and stopping, and dieting and stopping. And what I realized is that something would happen after a couple of weeks of dieting, and when I actually would start losing weight. And when I did this kind of a process with it, what I saw was that the part that didn't want to lose the weight was a part of me that had starved to death in a past life. And as soon as I would start losing weight, that part would panic. Like, now I'm going to die. Does that make sense? So I had the part of me that consciously wanted to lose the weight, and then a part that conscious that was unconscious that was opposed to it and deathly afraid of it. So this kind of a process, and working with polarities, the ones that we're talking about here are major archetypal polarities, but we have personal ones too with issues. So that's something that's interesting to explore too. Any comments, questions, anything about that? About just the general idea of polarities and how doing this kind of an integration meeting is really valuable. Anybody, anything, comments, anything? Okay, so as I mentioned, what we're talking about here with the polarities checklist and with the illustration that we have is aspects of the self, the body, that establishes polarities. Of course, we have two hands, 2 feet, we're polarized. So these are archetypal. In other words, these are polarities that are common to all of us. And the one that I mentioned with me dieting was a personal one to me. Archetypal ones are very powerful. And I can just point out these splits for you. So we have, let's see if we start here. So this one is the top bottom split, we call it actually. So there is, and you might actually tend more to, when I think of it now, I think of it separating at the heart. So we have the lower aspect of ourself and the lower chakras that are earthly. And then we have the upper ones that are higher ones. So in the polarities checklist, as the the upper one, it says focus on the ethereal spiritual part of your nature. And then the bottom one, focus on the earthly physical part of your nature. So this is the spiritual earthly also, we would say, top and bottom. Then we have the right left split. And this is the one that would be the masculine and feminine.
Mm.
So it's it's always, I don't know, I can't understand exactly why it is that the left brain is reflected in the right side of the body and vice versa. But it is. So the left brain, the masculine part of the brain, is reflected in the right side of the body. So the left brain, right side, right brain, left side. So the feminine aspect of the body is on the left side, the masculine is on the right side. And it's interesting. I don't know if anybody else has had any, and I know V, you work a lot with the body. Whenever I have a problem, like if I have an earache, I have one time I twisted my ankle, one time I twisted my knee or fell on my knee. It's always on the right side. Those kinds of things, they always occur on the right side. So it's about that masculine part of me, which is interesting when you think of these correlations, how important they are. Then there is the front back split, with the back being the past and the front being the future. And we're here supposedly in the present, which is not the case with most people, though. So many people are focused on the past, on, well, like the good old days, these were the best years of my life, high school, and it was someone who's 45 or 50 years old. Or with the grass is greener, like always projecting our energy out into the future, when what we're wanting to do is be in the present, to be in our bodies in the present moment. So working with these splits and finding out what's happening with them is really important. Then there is the head and the body. So you could say it's the mind-body split. How much time we spend in our heads, in our brains, kind of thinking rather than being aware of what's happening in our bodies. So there can be, in some cases, little or almost no awareness actually of how the body is responding to different situations, because we have divorced ourselves from that. And that's another one I noticed with I used to work with people on weight loss quite a bit. I don't do it anymore just because it's not my main interest. So I don't want to deviate from that. And I can't really support people as much as I would like to if it's not my main interest. But I noticed when I started really reflecting on my own eating habits that my eating habits had very little to do with hunger or with what my body was wanting or what would be beneficial for my body. And personally, I feel that the best diet for a person is if you can really be in touch with your body and eat what your body wants. Not what your emotions want to soothe yourself, or what your head thinks you should have, but what your body really wants. And to be able to do that, you need to be in touch with your body. So that's another really interesting one. And then there is the torso limb split, the last one, which is about the torso holds all of our organs, which are related to the inner aspects of the self, like our different emotions and feelings that are processed through digestion and different activities that go on in the organs in our body. And then the limbs, which are about how we move forward in the world and how we interact, our arms and hands, how we interact. So all of these are very powerful and important when there's something that can be brought more into balance and where there can be more awareness that will help a person to be able to function more optimally. And I think the masculine and feminine is a really great example. As I mentioned, in terms of polarities, it's the one that is discussed really the most often. Rightly so, in a way, because it is so out of balance in our society and in our world, where it's become so masculinized and the feminine has been so devalued. And of course, all of the things that go with the feminine, like intuition, etc., have been devalued. So the polarities checklist is something that, of course, we teach muscle testing in another part of the program. But you can actually just ask yourself, if you don't do muscle testing or pendulum testing or something, you can just ask yourself intuitively, is there one that really stands out as needing some support? And go from there with it. My favorite actually is to use a pendulum, because I can just go and have it find the right one. So for those who use pendulums, they can be really handy. That brings me to, I had some notes for facilitating this kind of a process with your clients. And I know that all of you are more experienced and may not be so much in need of this, but there are other people who will be watching this who really can benefit from it. And particularly someone, if this is a person's first course, doing a process like this, you have to be very aware of what you're doing and be in the right place to help them and understand what is needed. So, of course, the first thing is to be centered yourself as the practitioner, to be in your body in the moment with an open heart. And I describe the state that I focus on myself as pure potential. Just like being in that place where anything is possible. I'm not evaluating, that the client might in some way be limited. Just be in that place of pure potential, not having to figure it out, but completely open to where it might go, where the process might go. And of course, not, as I mentioned, not believing the client has any limits on what might happen in terms of good things. Another one is when you're talking to different parts of a person, each part of us believes that they're doing the best thing possible for the whole. So for instance, wherever the masculine part is or wherever the feminine part is, they believe they're doing what's most helpful. And I think people generally believe that they're doing what's most beneficial. They may be way off base. For instance, if someone feels like being violent is most helpful, it's obviously not a part that is connected, with the truth of who they are, but they believe it on some level. And I think it's helpful to understand that. And with that in mind, also, whatever comes up in this kind of a session with the client, the subpersonalities and the different aspects of ourselves can be, at times they can be amusing. And even to the client, they might think, well, this is so ridiculous. I can hardly believe it myself. At the same time, it's important for us also to be respectful, just to really always be respectful of all the parts of a person, even if they seem absurd. And you don't want to say, well, that's ridiculous, or anything like that. You want to stay in that place of pure potential, and you're really just gathering information, as is the client when they're connecting with these parts, because a lot of times what is coming out is something they were completely unaware of. And again, if you look at the masculine and feminine, most people have no idea where the balance or imbalance is within them. Of course, they they have no idea that they have masculine and feminine halves either. I remember when I first did it, I had no idea what was going to happen. My feminine part actually was like a little wispy, willowy kind of very unempowered kind of a part of the self that she, and I know when I grew up, my father and my brother, I had an older brother and an alcoholic father, and they were both very noisy and they were both very large. So they were always bigger than than me and my mother. So there was my mother and me, and then there were them. So the way I learned to behave was that I needed to be more like a man to be able to get by. And so I had a very weak feminine half. My masculine half wasn't all that effective either. When I first saw my masculine half, and I guess, I don't know. Some of you are older, somewhat older. Maybe you remember George of the Jungle from way back. I know there was a movie about it, and I never saw that, but way back, it's like he's swinging from limb to limb, and then he runs into a tree. He never was very effective. Neither of them really was at all effective. And I had no idea of that until I did this process. So it was, and that was, it must have been at least 30 years ago, probably by now, that I can remember it so clearly. It really surprised me and made an impression on me. And I did kind of like the George of the Jungle character, but I needed to be more effective than that, obviously, just kind of winging it, swinging. So that's just an example. Another part of it for the client is if they express any reluctance to go ahead with anything, it's important to remember that they are in control. And you can ask what is happening and why. But you always need permission to move forward with a client, especially when they're running into something difficult. They might run into something that takes them into a past life that was very traumatic. And so you might want to ask, do you feel okay going ahead with this, or something from childhood that was very traumatic? In those cases, it's always important for the clients to understand that they're in control of the process, and that you're there to support them. You're a facilitator. You're not in any way trying to control them or to control the situation. And of course, the ultimate goal, and the way that we do it with this process, is you have, again, I'll go back to the masculine and feminine. You have the masculine in one chair. We have them sit in different chairs, and the feminine in another chair. And then you have another chair for the soul, for the part that has the wisdom, the part that can bring them together so they come to an understanding. Because a lot of times, and I would say most of the time from my experience, when people connect with their masculine and feminine initially, they are at odds with one another. They are not in agreement about what the right course of action is. And ultimately, it's important because the feminine is the part of us that has that intuitive, creative understanding of the right direction for us. When we're connected with that truth. So that is the part, really, the part that dreams is the feminine. The part that carries out the dream is the masculine, that has the will to follow through. And it's not that there isn't something where they come together. It's not that the masculine is never creative or that the feminine has no will or whatever, but those are essentially the two different roles. So if you don't have, if a person is functioning only on the masculine without knowing anything about their purpose, and this relates again to the purpose, why we mention it in the purpose course, a person can spend a lot of time spinning their wheels and not going anywhere because they don't really know where they're going. And this also points to why it's so important to explore what your purpose is and what your heart really wants and why you're here, so that you can be going in the right direction. So if you don't have that, things don't work out very well generally. And on the other end, if you have the dream, but you don't have the will to follow through or feel empowered to follow through, then nothing's going to happen. So you need them both to be functioning optimally and then to be functioning together in balance so that they can communicate. And I think it's been shown, and you might know about this, Dee, that there's a different level of, I guess, brain neurotransmitters or something, communication between the both sides of the brain. Some people have a lot of communication, some people don't have hardly any. And what we want is actually for there to be a lot of connection between the two. Are you at all familiar with that, or?
You know, the only thing I know, I remember, I forgot. And that's that one inside the brain, there's a part between the two halves of the brain that's kind of connected, but I don't remember how that works.
Yeah.
I guess it's sort of like the yin and yang symbol, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you
Yeah.
have enough of both and they're balanced, then you're more in balance.
Right.
But it's funny, this thing about the masculine and feminine, because it brings up a lot of things for me, because we have such a sexist society.
Oh, right. Yeah.
If you're mentioning the feminine side to some men, that's like emasculating and offensive. And if you're telling a woman that she's too masculine, then that's offensive. And I think I was in my early 30s. I had a massage, and the masseuse told me, "Oh, you have a lot of masculine energy on one side." And I kind of know that I was a bit androgynous, but I never thought of it as masculine. And then I was told it again, like last year when I was doing a lot of internal work. And I thought, wow, what's that about? And then I thought, why am I uncomfortable with that? I mean, why was I uncomfortable with it? And it was like, well, I know I'm not a girly girl, but I feel very feminine, like a woman. And then I realized that masculinity is connected to my first father, my father figure, right? Who was a really ineffectual man. So me trying to think about walking in my power, like you say, taking action, I was totally disconnected from it, because it was a bit triggering with, so you were saying sometimes people may not know, you know, or feel in touch, but I think also they may not know what to do with the information.
Right. Yeah. And that's obviously very true too. Yeah. And you bring up another point that I think is really important, is that, so we have masculine and feminine. It's like there's an assumption that each of us should have an equal amount of masculine energy and feminine energy, like 50-50. But that's not the case either. And we're not supposed to be. So balancing the masculine and feminine doesn't mean that you end up with 50-50. Right. It means you end up where you are as being yourself. So there are some women who are more masculine or more action oriented, you know, like women who want to be in the military, or women, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but just have more masculine energy. And then there are other women who have a lot more, you know, they're just frilly kind of feminine women. And they're both okay. They're both right for them. And the same with a man. You know, there are some men who are very feminine and very sensitive. And then there are other men, it's like and of course, part of it is the macho, you know, it is societal rather than essence, you know, what we really are. Because
Conditioning.
there's that macho, you know, I'm a man, you know, kind of thing. But there are men who obviously have more masculine energy,
Yeah.
like cowboys or whatever.
Yeah, but it's so stigmatized, and that's
Right.
where
Right.
that's where we're stuck. So
Right.
if we're already indoctrinated all these years, and then we're intimidated, right? Because maybe we don't want to be called masculine or don't want to be called feminine, then we can't even connect or express that. But it's so based in sexism and misogyny. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
That it's hard for me to even think about it, because also the work that I'm
Right.
doing, the work I'm doing too, it makes me sensitive to it. But I feel it's like saying one religion is right. You know what I mean? It's just so oppressive. And I don't know
Mhm.
when. I was hopeful in the future, that I felt in the future that this would be a more androgynous world and we'd be less judgmental, because things are slowly changing and things are opening up. But I don't know what to think as of this year, so whatever.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah. But I think that it is an important point to realize that we're not talking about trying to achieve equal.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
some people they'll have more masculine oriented desires and some will have more feminine oriented desires, depending on actually their internal makeup. And all of it is, you know, it is what it is. It's all,
Oh,
whoever
human.
we
The other
uniquely
thing,
are
it's
is
just
fine.
human. It's just all human, but we put these terms on it that's just repressing us more,
Right.
not just from being our authentic selves. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting in the United States now. One of the things that they're talking about, the new coming administration, is having less females in the military. You know, they
Mhm.
want them out of the military now because they're threatened by them, by strong women.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's the
And it's
Western
just
side, and
interesting.
the other side of the globe, they practice clitorectomy. So any power that a woman has that they are threatened or don't understand or feel intimidated needs to be squashed and destroyed. And it's just really,
Mhm. Yeah.
it's sort of like racism to me too. You know what I mean? It's just so
Mhm.
oppressive, so
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, and I think that has a lot to do with the whole abortion issue and even control of birth control. You know, keep the women in the house having babies.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. Crazy, right? It's so limiting. All that power you have that they can do and be, and you want to squash it. And it's so colonizing and so paternalistic. It's just exasperating.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have the opportunity. The way that I look at it is each of us, in the way that we live our lives, is a vote for what we want in the world.
Thank you. I like that. I'm writing that down.
Well, it is, you know, well, that is what it is. And from that perspective, being ourselves is very important to put our piece of the puzzle in there
Mhm.
and to allow it for ourselves, of course.
Yes.
So anyhow, so um
Yeah, what you say, the way we live our lives, what? We have the opportunity that the choice,
it's
but the way
like
we live
our
our lives.
vote for the world that we want to create. You know, if we live our lives where it is actually where we're connected and allowing ourselves to live the truth of who we are,
Mhm.
that's our vote for the world that we want to create. If we allow ourselves to be stifled because there are some people who want us to be other than we are, then we're not actually standing up for, as we could, for the world that we want to create.
True, but it might become very dangerous too. So
Well, yeah, and obviously there are places in the world where it's completely impossible and different. I'm not saying there aren't situations, but I think it's
yeah.
something to strive for. And it also, to me, is there was a time when I didn't feel that anything I did mattered. And now I think everything I do matters. You know I'm one of billions of people, but every one of us is adding something to the mix, and we want to add our genuine selves. And it does matter. I think each of us matters. And of course, just being an example of a person living your genuineness, living in harmony with who you really are, that also is a good thing for people around you to see.
Leading by example.
Right. Yeah. Just allowing yourself to be. And of course, if you want to grow, it's an essential part of it, is to allow yourself to be yourself. So anyhow, okay. So, again, going back to clients, the goal then, if you're looking at the polarities, whatever they are, is to bring in that wise, soulful part that can mediate and have a conversation that can go, in all different ways between the masculine, feminine, and the soul, or spiritual, earthly, and the soul. And then ultimately what tends to happen is that there's an agreement that's reached, and that the polarities come to a greater understanding, so that they can function together and function in harmony with what's true for oneself. So that's the goal of the process. Another part of it, of course, we do so many processes. Well, this is just a few minutes, but this is not one of them. This is one where you need to allow the time it takes, and to be willing to slow down enough that the client has the opportunity to reflect. So it is a much more reflective process than it's not like tapping or reframing and anchoring and being done. It's really all about awareness and allowing the parts to express themselves and come to that mutual understanding, which may happen also over time. It may not be like and I don't think it is in most of us. It's not one step, like we have this polarized masculine and feminine, and all of a sudden it's the divine masculine and divine feminine that are fully unified and connected with our wholeness. It's not necessarily that way in most cases. So it's just like anything, maturity, just growth is happening. Also, it is really important just to keep in touch with the client and ask them how they're doing, especially if things are challenging in a process. Like, are you okay with what's happening now? How are you feeling about this? And generally they'll let you know if it's just too much for them. But in most cases, what I found is people, and it is, I guess, a matter of strength, like how strong the soul is, the presence of the soul, that they want to go through whatever they need to go through to come to that place of wholeness. That's what I experience most often. Mm-hmm. If a person isn't ready, there's no way you're going to get there. So, and it's not respectful, and it just is not right to try to kind of push a person into submission. So any questions or comments about that, about how to, from your perspective, what you're wanting to do in the process?
Regarding your comment just now, Jane, about not being ready, suggests that your soul, it's not the timing for your soul to, I don't know, some connection there. I was interested in that.
Well, people are at different stages of their development. I mean, there are people who have very little ability to even have any introspection.
Right.
And then there are different things that can come up. Like people can be concerned about being judged as being bad, or, there are a lot of things that can come up. And that's why you want to stay in touch. And if one of them comes up, you might have to move off into that too. Like, like, I'm afraid you're going to judge me for this. I know, I remember one time I had a client for 6 months. And she told me at a certain point she wanted to talk to me about something, and she had been afraid to because she thought that I wouldn't want her to be my client anymore if she told me. So there are just so many things that can come up, and we need, that's why we just need to make sure we're in touch and not pushing, not ever having them feel like we're pushing them. What we're doing is we're supporting their process that they want to have. Does that make sense, Pauline?
I just feel a little bit missing for me with that. It's the soul's, the overall presence of the soul in this.
Well, if you in a different course, we talk about the stages of development, and we start out initially where there's very little soul connection in the person who's present, who you're talking to. For instance, and I come back to Donald Trump because he's such an obvious, how much soul is present? Not much. So there's a whole range, and that as we go through those stages, say you go talk about those 7 stages which relate to our energy system.
Right.
You go through the first, second, third, and you get to the heart. That's where, and being motivated by love. Where do you think people are now? They're down in here. As a society, they're down. They're in the second and third chakra more than in the heart. Very few. I mean, I don't know what the exact percentage is of people who are really have an open heart and can be. I'm trying to think of the word. Can be open, to allowing that, that vulnerability to come forward. That's only a certain part of the population to begin with. And then where we have wounding there, then that can, when that part, that vulnerable part starts to feel threatened, like she's going to judge me, or they're going to see how horrible I am, or then they can pull back. But you don't want to try to push them through it. What you want to do is find out what's happening and go back with them. You want to go where they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And I can see then the soul's, the energy of the soul. To me, it's like, wow, to get people back to that energy of their soul.
Well, of course you want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is primary.
Right.
Really.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the foundation of everything for us. But it is, if they're encountering something that causes them to be afraid, or that vulnerable part, you can connect with something like a person, say in a past life, a woman maybe did things that she felt ashamed of. Like maybe she was a prostitute, as an example. And I'm not saying you even have to be ashamed if you're a prostitute. I'm not judging anything, but just feeling, vulnerable and afraid to reveal. You need to find out what's happening there to be able to open the heart enough that the soul can come through and express itself. So you just don't, everybody is completely unique. You don't know what's going to come up. But what you're doing, I think you're honoring that person wherever they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, honoring, and also honoring the potential of that person.
Well, right. We're wanting to help them. We're wanting to help them to expand and grow and recognize that they're not being judged and that they're in a safe place. But that's not everything. It's a process. Building that connection with the soul is a process.
I
Um,
think for me too, Jane, I think one of the important things to remember is that we don't know what a person's choice or journey is meant to be in this.
Right.
And so speaking to Pauline, like, I know Pauline sees the soul as sort of the end all, it's like the all-knowing, everything is perfect if we can become aligned with the soul, which is true, but it may not be a person's choice for this lifetime to really make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And, they might even think they want that connection, but they can never, they just don't, they have not made a contract, so to speak, for this lifetime to ever advance beyond a second or third level, a chakra level experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're working, because I've had a few experiences now where I have been very clearly able to see that this person, this is sort of like their cap, or at least right now,
Right.
at the
Yeah.
moment, this is their
Mhm.
cap. This is, they can't go where I'd like to them, where I think I would like them to go. And you just have to say, okay, then this is where they're at. This is where we're going to stay until they're
Right.
ready to do
Right.
something different.
Yeah.
And they may never be ready. That's the whole thing. You just have to accept that they may never want to move beyond this place of this limitation, this next level, whatever,
Mhm.
that they're in.
Mhm. Right.
So potential is not necessarily, everyone has the potential to elevate and to a higher vibration, but whether or not it's a choice for this journey is something that we don't necessarily know.
Right. And I think you were suggesting, Margaret, that it's not ours to try to control it. It's their life. And there are, it's something we don't talk about this because and people can misunderstand it and become judgmental, but there are people who are more evolved souls than others that have more of a capacity to grow and to grow more quickly. And that too is not a judgment. A younger soul, everybody starts out as a baby, right? And whatever is happening, that's the simple solution, is to honor what the client is wanting, because it is their sense of it that is going to really control where things go. If inside they're putting on the brakes, there's nothing you can do, and it's not your position to do anything. You're there to help them if they want something. If they don't want something, then that's fine.
And we don't know, like Margaret was saying, just because we can't see what their soul development is, we don't know what's going on.
Right.
Maybe they're not doing anything right now, is resting up and observing and witnessing. We don't know.
Right. Yeah.
My experience with friends and with people in the past, some people are afraid to look. They just feel like it's too much. I don't want to deal with it. And then some people feel like I can't control it. If I open that door, I won't be
Right.
able
they're afraid of it. Yeah.
yeah, they have fear. But I have a best friend who's like a sister, and I've wanted to push her into just trying to, just do some work. And she's the one that told me I don't, it's too much. And then this past year, she had her best friend, this couple went to Africa and they died. And then before she could go to the Netherlands, their funeral, her brother died. And then she's in a relationship with somebody who's like autistic and doesn't talk. So, now she went to her doctor, and I said, you're grieving. It would really, really be good if you could. Once again, I was gently trying to suggest and then she went to the doctor, and he says, I think it's slightly depressed. I think you need to do, she's also bipolar. I think you need to do maybe some cognitive behavioral therapy. So we've been talking about that, but I just want to share, I did some medicine and I had a vision. And random, I wasn't thinking about her trying to change anything. And I saw that she has mental illness in her family, but her family is really interesting kind of people. And I saw this vision that she comes from a line of people like that. She got some heavy, heavy stuff in her ancestry. And then she tells me this year, that was last year, and I didn't even tell her about it. I said, I'm not going to tell her about it. And I waited till this year because her cousin told her. that they came from a family of witches and warlocks. I mean, so I feel like she's not just carrying her own thing, she's carrying some
carrying a lot of stuff,
ancestral
right.
stuff. And that's why I wanted her to try to help herself so she could stop hating herself.
Right, yeah.
It's, so it's very interesting that spiritual development. And to respond to Pauline, if I may, all we're doing it, we have this idea. I think this soul development connection is beautiful healing work and self-connecting work. But I think that acceptance of there's a lot to be had from looking at and accepting where we're at. And our way
Right.
path might really be different. You know what I mean? And then they call
Right,
it,
yeah,
because there's a whole thing called spiritual ego. You familiar with
yeah,
that?
right. Well, that's what I was saying. What we call spiritual may not be anything
Exactly.
actual spiritual.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot going on, and I think the simple thing is just to realize that the client is in control and stay in touch with them and do what they feel is right. You can make suggestions like, well, this might help you up a certain point or whatever, but it's not ours to try to control what's happening. And I think from that perspective also of what I think V and Margaret, you were both suggesting, we don't know. I think sometimes souls come just to have a rest. They might have had, the last life might have been so traumatic, they just need to relax and chill out. That's all they want. So they don't need us to be pushing them and telling them that they need to do this or that.
Yeah, I think that there are times when, like you say, they just want people to make them feel good. They just want to feel good. They want to hear all the good things and not necessarily be challenged, which is fine because we're all different. And yeah.
Right. And we learn in different ways too. We grow in different ways. We can't control that for a client either. And we don't have to know all of this stuff. We just have to follow kind of the road that's being presented to us, the path that's being presented to us without judgment, because everyone is divine in the end.
We are all one in the end.
Right. Right.
We're just looking at other aspects of ourselves. You really want to get your mind blown and start really driving yourself a little crazy, but
right. Anyhow, I think it's an interesting conversation to really be clear too on what your role is with a client. It's obviously very important.
Because you're meddling in some deep stuff.
Basically. Right. Exactly.
You gotta really watch yourself because
Right.
I think when I'm honest, Jane, I think that's one of the reasons why I've been so comfortable with the approach that you and Philip have, because you never ever have ever come from the you're telling us that we're going to be all knowing and that we can direct somebody, a client, to a place where we should make them go to a place that they go in order for them to get better. You've never been that way, and that's basically where what my belief has always been anyway, that it's always about where the person is at, where you're at, and even my own personal growth. You have your epiphanies and you level up to something and you think, oh my God, isn't this wonderful? You realize that this is only just one more step with a lot more to come. And yet sometimes you think that you've reached an apex of some sort, but that's when you're really just beginning your journey. You don't realize that there is no
keep going, right? Yeah, I haven't seen anybody who was done yet.
Yeah, no,
I don't think we will. Not here with us. I mean, they're already over there somewhere. So.
Right.
But maybe what you're doing is introducing somebody to just a cornerstone, a foundation of their beginning of their path or where they're going.
Right. Yeah. So it's all about just loving them and accepting their journey for what it is for them and what they want.
Very
so with that, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, very interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad we had this because I think it is really important to be clear for
Mhm.
yourself what your
Mm.
role is.
Mm. Yeah.
And people have different ideas. It always interests me some people who kind of profess to be spiritual gurus, and they'll say, "Well, it's all about dot dot dot." You know, it's like, well, maybe for you,
Mm.
but we're all
Mhm.
totally unique. And I think just the Overleas points out how many, how all of the variety and richness of who we are, and just different cultures, and well, there's just so much. But you don't. I think the point is you don't have to understand everything. You just have to be on the path with them. You're walking beside them. You're not trying to drag them along. You're not trying to push
Mm.
them. You're just walking with them when they
Mm.
want to be with you. When they feel they are benefiting from
Mm.
having that connection with you for what they want to achieve what they want.
Mm.
So
Mm.
before we run out of time, I would like to do a demonstration of a polarity. Is there anyone who would like to do the masculine and feminine or any of these?
Um, there is something, but I don't know who it's going to be with the masculine and the feminine.
Well, is it
Thinking of my
any of the
parents.
polarities on the sheet?
Yeah, it's a personal one, I guess.
Or is it more of a personal issue, you mean?
Yeah, the energies of my parents, and yeah, they were very kind of opposite. And I bring in the nervous system because I can't separate the influence of the nervous system on that situation.
Well,
And
I would like to,
but it might not be
because other
appropriate.
people are going to be watching this, also
Yeah,
stick with the
yeah,
polarities if we
yeah,
possibly can.
right.
Are you saying that it's a polarity that you would want to explore, Pauline?
Well, yeah, because it was so
More of a
in
person. She
contrast.
said it's more of a personal rather
It's like,
than an archetypal issue. It's like with her
yeah,
something with her parents.
with the energy of my father versus the energy of my mother, and how I kind of lived between those energies and how it influenced my energy and my emotions. That's the kind of thing, to get more balance there. So my father was like a lot of fear, a lot of contraction in that way, and that energy was expressed because I couldn't stand up to that energy. I noticed that, the way I grip things, and there's a kind of like masculinity to some of my movements. And I used to kind of wonder about it because my mother was very different. She was very quiet and passive, and I had to kind of not worry her kind of thing. So then the energy, not that roughness that I kind of felt ashamed of, but the weakness, the passiveness, and very in contrast. So, but I lived between those. So what happened to my energies? And listening to you, it's kind of interesting, how that kind of working class, because, I had this thing with class, is the roughness, was coming from my father, because I couldn't stand up to his sort of, power over me kind of thing, because, and then with my mother, because I needed her because she was sort of a safer energy in that respect. But it was also energy that I couldn't grow in, you know. So it's how to get a balance between both of those energies. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking about, but whether that's relevant to this, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It sounds like it might get a little too complicated.
I
And
don't think I
it
would
sounds
think
also like it might be a more than one session kind of an issue with
Okay.
that.
Yeah, but it always is interesting to me, the emotional, but the energy is very much there. And, the physiological aspect is really, I think, stronger than people could imagine in what will be developed energetically in that individual experiencing that kind of contrast, level of contrast to survive, you know.
Mhm.
So I'd like to kind of, well, just knowing about it helps me to bring them closer together and recognize the masculine doesn't have to be rough, you know,
Mhm.
and the feminine doesn't have to be so weak and quiet and no opinions and sort of,
Mhm.
We can explore that when
yeah,
we meet Pauline, if you'd like
yeah.
to do that, we can definitely explore that.
Right. Okay, thanks, Margaret.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting it came up. Thank you, Jane, in this lesson.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyone else? Any other ideas for?
What are you looking for? Something that has to do with the splits, the polarity?
Yeah,
split?
just one of these. Or if you want, I could test, with my pendulum if someone wants me to test it to see if there's one to explore.
So with those polarity splits, is
Mm.
that a way of looking at how we're disconnected? And with our body and our mind, is that sort of
Well, that's one of them is the mind body one. What it is, each one is unique, each polarity, relating to different parts of the body, as is shown in the diagram.
so I'll do the first one, the right and left.
The right and left. So you want to do the masculine and feminine?
Might as well. We put a lot of energy.
We've been talking a lot about it.
Continue with it.
Okay. So have you done this integration meeting before? Do you remember?
Mhm.
It's the one with the chairs?
Yeah, I have done the reading and the book, and also it is very much like a Gestalt chair exercise,
Mm-hmm.
but different.
So the thing that happens usually with Zoom is that people don't have like a whole ring of chairs. And what we generally do is just face different directions. Like, so the masculine can be here, the feminine can face this way, and the soul is in the middle, something like that. And it would be just really a matter if you're on a couch to kind of
Yeah,
turn your
one way, yeah.
direction and your, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And then the soul is in the middle, you said.
right, yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
And the thing that's interesting, I think, with this is it's all about intention, like intention of moving into a certain seat or a certain position to connect. Like, say you're going to connect first with, do you have an opinion wanting to connect first with the masculine or
Sure.
feminine?
I'd like to, does the soul start or can I do feminine?
You would start with either the masculine or feminine. The soul comes in
Feminine.
after the two of them.
After the 10, okay.
So which one would you like to start with?
Feminine, I guess.
Okay, so say you're on the left side and you would be turning like that. Before
Neutral,
you
but-
do that, just go back to neutral. And what I want to say is, as you move into that position, do it with the intention when you sit again in that position that you're going to connect with that feminine part of the self, because it's just, to me, it's amazing how powerful it is. It actually really does happen.
It's like channeling. It's like channeling. I'm just being silly. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, did you have anything specific you wanted to explore related to them, or just do kind of a checkup?
Yeah, I do a checkup.
Okay. Okay.
Time's sake. I mean, the other thing that ran through my mind was this thing about how they could support each other. Like how my feminine side could support me accessing the masculine side to follow through on things. I don't know if that makes sense. It just...
I'm writing this down.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So you ready to begin?
I am ready.
Okay. So then just move into the feminine position and just
Yeah.
settle in there. And if you want, you can close your eyes and just feel what that part of you feels. Just feel what it feels like and notice also notice if you get any like visuals, what she looks like, just whatever you sense about that feminine part.
Mm. Right. Right.
She might want to talk to you. You might just whatever you notice. Let us know what you're noticing.
So, she's kind of, this is to do with my body type, kind of stocky and kind of grounded, kind of
Mhm.
earthy,
Mm-hmm.
earthy.
Perky, did you say?
Earthy,
Oh, earthy. Mm-hmm.
earthy, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
grounded. The feeling of her is that it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean she feels that. I mean that she experiences that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what's coming. That's what came to me. But in her, I want to say her girliness or feminine side is like, soft lotion, perfume, all that. That's
Mm-hmm.
even though earthy and grounded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Was there anything she'd like us or you to know that she wants to say about what
She'd like
she's
to have-
experiencing?
Yeah, she'd like to have more confidence in herself. And what was the other thing I thought when we were speaking, I was taking notes. I think she's a bit tired.
Mm-hmm. Why is she tired?
from trying, just trying and trying,
Mm-hmm.
judging and judging,
Mm-hmm.
exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Anything else she wants you to know?
That
Mm.
even with that, even though, even with those particular feelings or attributes, she has some wisdom, unacknowledged wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Mm.
Or discernment, that, those two kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Anything else she wants to say before you check in with masculine?
Sure, I think that she could, in another world, she could use a whole lot more hugs.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody else could experience a soft skin in the perfume.
Yeah. So you ready to switch to the masculine?
I am, I'm gonna lick my
And so
hand.
just switch over and then in the same way, just settle into it and notice what you notice.
All right. Well, first thing that came to my mind is broken strength.
What does that refer to?
I felt that in my body as soon as I switched over. I don't know, the past year or so with all the moving I've been doing, a little SI issue that kicks up. So it's if I do too much or do too little, it kicks up. And so that's my back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Into my back, strong back, right? Strong back is strength, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a little weakness there, just like the broken. And that's what I thought of. I must think that about what I know about masculinity. Not all the men I know that are like that. I'm saying something about what I know, my experience of.
Can you say more about that? I'm not sure I quite
Maybe
understood.
it's what the masculinity I allow. So I'm gonna follow this. So maybe what it is maybe what it is that because of my own limitations or my own sense of worth, I only let certain male energy I can into my
Mhm.
sphere,
Mhm.
into my sphere. Yeah, I mean, males are human beings, just like women, so we all
Mhm.
have some weaknesses, but so maybe I don't want to judge them like, but I'm saying I don't know a lot of them personally, but I know of some really capable male human beings.
Mhm.
They have not really crossed my path too well.
Mhm. So how does that affect the masculine that you have
Well,
that perspective?
I, how does it affect the masculine in me?
Yeah, how does he feel about,
This, well, I mean,
I mean, does he feel repressed by that?
just the way I felt, and maybe I'm tired. And today I walked a lot, I swam. I haven't stretched properly, but maybe because I'm tired, but why does he feel that energy feels a bit broken? Maybe that feeling means that if we must call him he, because it's he, she, whatever,
Mhm.
can't take action like they need to, because they're not as strong as they need to be right now.
Not as strong physically, you mean, because of the problems you're having with your back? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's not just physically, I think it's the holistic thing, physically, spiritually. Yeah, yeah.
How does he feel about the feminine part of you?
What just came out of my head is I think he might be overly reliant on her. And that's not just my fault, but it's kind of conditional, societal. Like maybe I can't access, I'm not good at blending those two parts. I didn't know how, or didn't even think how,
Mhm.
how they could support each other.
Mhm. Would you like to connect with your soul and see what your soul says about it?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Jane. I would.
Okay, so you can go to the middle part and just connect in with what you feel in your heart, just opening to that divine soul in you to emerge.
Well, I just had an interesting feeling. I bowed my head and held my heart a few times today with gratitude because I had a decent day, active day. And with the question you just asked me, as I held in my heart, I just kind of sensed kind of love coming out to both sides of me.
Mm-hmm.
And energy, like kind of a loving, yeah, that's the word for it. Just
Mm-hmm.
kind of coming out, kind of spreading out.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
what would that soulful part say about the masculine being concerned that he's overly reliant on the feminine part?
I just can't even, he needs help. He needs help. But I think the love was like, give them both a break kind of thing.
Meaning,
The love was like, just, that whatever I just said or discovered, how about just giving them both a break or send them some love, like support,
mm-hmm,
of that spiritual or emotional support.
mm-hmm,
Most likely it's spiritual support, right?
mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
the spiritual is a little bit beyond the physical and the emotional. So or maybe that energy can be supportive in healing,
mm-hmm.
maybe,
No.
maybe.
Well, just if you imagine from where you are in the soul's position, like you have the masculine on one side and the feminine Can you just ask the masculine how he feels about receiving that love?
Okay. It just came to my mind about time.
Mm-hmm. What does he mean by that?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't think it meant just acknowledge, but that he really needs it,
Mm-hmm.
because, being masculine and trying to be stoic and not being so emotional, not asking to have your needs met when you
Mm-hmm.
need support.
Mm-hmm. So how might you, just from the soul's perspective, how can you maybe give him more support?
No, I just realized something, that part of the reason I probably, besides all the negative conditioning about, like, my parents used to say a lot of messed up stuff. They used to call some women mannish, and my mother was mannish, and she was always fighting my father, but they would talk about it. This one's, and then she would emasculate him in front of me as a kid. So, and then he would get drunk and beat her. So, but anyway,
Yeah, I'm not too healthy, huh?
yeah, so I'm thinking here you got the person who has physical power to be violent, but not the spiritual and emotional power to not allow these things to happen because he was weak person.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of hard. On one hand, you had the weak person. He was working himself kind of in the ground, but he had bad habits with the drinking, smoking, gambling, that whole thing. And then my mother's over here being self-righteous. Really, I think she was really lesbian. That's what I think. She was really, what do you call it? She was very religious fanatic, like, but then she was rough and tough. She got the job done. And she always had so many wonderful girlfriends. She had all these friends. She would do everything for them. And then there's just vibrations. As I got older, I recognized.
Yeah, that, yeah.
Yes, so I think there was a lot of gender or masculine dynamics going on in my household as a kid. And I had to wait to be a grown woman to realize. And how did that catch me in the middle? I mean, I'm not a tall woman. I'm not shapely, kind of have square shape. So I'm kind of muscular, but I do have things that are feminine about me. And I like that. I'm comfortable somewhat in my body, but then I'm judgmental because there's a war with the masculine and feminine, really, from my
And
upbringing.
within you, yeah.
I think it resides in me, kind of, because I'm watching them, or sort of, as Pauline was saying, watching the parents, and we're picking up vibrations from them, right? So how does all that manifest in who I am, right? Me being able to accept both sides of myself. I don't even like to see there's masculine and feminine. I hate this duplicitous thinking. You know what I mean? But
Well, except it is in our being.
I
I mean, we
feel it.
have
I've been
right and
told
left
it.
sides of our brain and right and left sides of the body. And what I wonder is if the solution for now is just to take some time, maybe sitting like you are now, imagining being in that soulful place and sending them both love, and just communicating with them, maybe journaling.
I'm going to make it a practice because now I'm conscious of it.
Yeah, because, and it is ultimately, I think, for all the parts of ourselves, what we want is love.
Right.
And just for them both to feel accepted and loved, and part of, as valuable parts of your wholeness, whatever that means for them uniquely, and to understand that and love it, love that in them.
It helps them heal too. Because this conversation gave me an opportunity to look at it anew. And also I have a physical holding in the right side of my body that I had to contact with last year. And I was like, what's with my whole right side of my body? And then I'm thinking, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm bracing for the next blow. So I was doing a lot. I was out of my comfort zone. I was learning a lot, but this side was just getting tighter and tighter and achier and achier. And then I realized, oh, because who am I to think that I could change? Who am I? How dare I? So I was waiting for the
Mhm.
book. That's the right side. So I know about the split. I just don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, but if you come from that soulful place and just love them both, and it might be a new way to explore what that means for you and uniquely, you know.
It might be an integration
Mm.
meeting.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think that makes, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And it
It
seems
follows
like
in
that
line.
was where your soul went, is, you know, sense you, I wrote down, you sense to love both sides.
I just touched there and I could just feel it, just like, if you see a picture where it's color stains, it spreads on like thick paper and it just spreads. That's how I felt, it just spreading.
Mhm. Yeah, and they just want that. So if you just from that place imagine, how are they both feeling about that plan?
I think they're feeling better, and I think there's some kind of power in being recognized.
Mm.
Because
Mhm.
I saw my father in an ayahuasca trip, and he was like not even full person. He was he was so undeveloped spiritually that he was just like a little person. And I saw him behind and some ancestors. Oh, it was interesting. I had saw all these I seen these beautiful Black African women, and it was immediately chest connection, like that. And then the guys were standing around in kente cloth and they were holding a cape because they wanted me to join them. And I'm like, I'm not a joiner. I wasn't too trusting. And in the background, my father's hopping around like an opaque figure. I know exactly what that meant when I saw that. He's still feeling, but that's part of my masculine, right? He's still feeling,
Be, yeah, projected. Yeah.
yeah. So I kind of feel the shadow self of that on my
Mhm.
right side
Mhm.
of that energy and of him. So, oh boy, thanks so much, Jean, for taking me on a real trip.
Well, you're welcome. Well, it feels that felt really beautiful to me.
Mm.
Good ending.
Mm.
And well, what it shows also is there's a sincere desire, you know, for from both of them to evolve and to grow, help you to grow into more of who you really are,
I really
to allow
appreciate it.
yourself.
I really appreciate it. I appreciate it. So thank you. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. Yeah, thank
Like,
you. Thank you for being open.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Mm.
Bree.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
me too. Yeah.
Yeah, I really felt like there was an arc that just sort of came across from our earlier discussions too, where we were talking about that whole idea of accepting a client for where they're at. Because it really feels like there's I don't know if awakening is the right word, but almost like for you having this moment of accepting where you're at with this realization of this, or acknowledgement of these two sides, and how they came to be. And I could I had this like visceral experience when you were talking about your journey and you were seeing all of these ancestors and such. I felt the connection to all of that energy very, very strongly.
Thank
And
you. I'm
how,
so glad because it's beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful things that has happened in my life. Thank you.
yeah, I can really feel it. I mean, my heart was just expanding and there was just so much beautiful. Oh, I don't even know how to put it into words, but
Well, I get it.
but so, and I really felt like you were experiencing some sort of connection that was, connecting dots, let's say, or
Mhm.
and some way to bring it back to where you are now so that you can grow from this experience with these two parts of you more integrated and more balanced.
Mhm.
It
Because
was
I think I walk disconnected. There's a disconnect. Even though I feel wholesome and I do connect with my spirit, my soul, I just kind of walk through the world disconnected in some ways.
Well, that'll be interesting to explore where it goes.
Yeah, because I see you
Yeah.
connecting dots. I see, that's what I started
Mm.
seeing when you were describing that experience, was dots being connected. That's how I saw it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It was like you were, it was the greater reality. that you're
Mm,
sharing with us.
ah,
You know.
ah,
Mm,
thank you.
Thank you so
Right.
much for sharing.
yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
listening.
Thank you.
Thank you
No.
for being present.
Mm.
Appreciate it.
So that, I guess we're toward the end of our time synchronously. Um, I really enjoyed this, this class. Well, I think it was really a wonderful conversation, and I guess I don't know, just
Mm,
there is something I don't know special. I felt special, just all of us talking, and
I enjoyed it very much.
yeah,
Thank you.
me
I,
too.
I did feel like that. I mean, there's always such positive energy in these groups. I mean, that's one of the things that I always express about your classes and the people that are here, and I always feel connected. And it was a very nice sharing of energy this evening.
Yeah, that's what I felt
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
So-
learned, and thank you so much, because I was going over the material and I was like, oh boy, I really need to show up for this class. Maybe I'm gonna get a better understanding. I mean, and analytically, I abstractly, I got it, but this was really, like you said, connecting. It's very connecting. So thank you.
Mhm. Wonderful.
Yeah, it's like you know, we are learning so much about ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's exciting. You know, I mean, it's just
Mhm.
offering so much, you know, take away all kinds of,
Right.
I mean, because it's expanding our reality.
Big
And
hug to you guys.
Yes, yes, right back at you. Right back at you. Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. Yeah,
Oh,
it feels so right.
it does.
Mm.
Okay, any final comments, questions, anything?
There was a weird note on the homework about November 30th.
Yeah,
What did
And-
it say?
And I think I missed it up. It says the work, the lab for this class will be November 30th or something like that. And I was like, oh man, I think.
Oh, I think that must have been a
it was
mistake.
old note. I
Okay,
think it was
it's
an old
Thursday
note.
the lab, right?
Yeah, I think when Philip was switching the syllabus around, he probably just missed
Oh.
it.
Yeah, he probably missed something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that note exists. This is my first time taking the class B. I took it before.
You remember this one
It
before?
exists on the other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, sorry about that.
So much. No problem. Now I understand. Thank you.
Okay, so Philip will be with you on Thursday for the practice lab. And I'll be back with you again next week. So have a wonderful weekend and see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.